Welcome to Into the Black Void. This is Episode 1, An Unwanted Passenger, a scary tale of one man's struggle to overcome his past. But as we will see, some things can never be forgiven. So, come with me as we dive into the Black Void.
Part 1. I never came home. Can a man redeem himself of the bad things he has done, or is he doomed to pay for them for the rest of his life? It is the 12th December, 1944, or somewhere thereabouts. The world is at war. The Germans are being pushed back to their homeland, but they still fight to the death in spite that they are losing to the Allies. They send the young and old alike to the front lines, like lambs to the slaughter. The war for me ended a year ago, but the scars remained, but they will never heal. The war had changed the man I was into someone else I didn't like. The horrible things I saw and did on the battlefield overseas will stick in my memories forever, like a splinter burying itself deep in my brain. I was honorably discharged from the army due to stress. My commanding officer said there was no place for me anymore. I was no longer a functioning part of the unit. I had been in the army since 1939, but I was no longer fit to serve my country. So I was shipped back to England, now living off my army pension that was dwindling very fast. I did not know what to do with my life anymore. I live in a small village called Milbury, in the southeast of England, on my own. There wasn't much in the small village: a church, a greengrocer, and a tiny police station. And an inn. That's where I rented a small, dank room upstairs right above the pub, called the Highwayman. It was the cheapest place I could find around here. I had no wife and no children to speak of. I never found the right woman. The only family I have around here was my sister, Margaret. She is 2 years older than me. Her husband had gone to fight in the war as well, so she was all alone now. After our mother and father died, we hadn't seen each other in some time. She lived in another village, 7 miles from my own, and only 2 roads connected them together. The bad country road was called Dead End Lane. It was tarmacked, but it had a lot of potholes and had twists and sharp turns. In daylight, it was treacherous, and it was even worse at night. You could barely see 5 feet in front of the car, even when I had the headlights on. I never really liked using that road, unless I had to. So I always chose the other road, called Clay Lane. It was shorter and much easier to drive on. It was built a couple of years ago to replace the old one, so Dead End Lane was used only in emergencies. The 2 sleepy villages had sprung to life in recent years. There was an influx of children who were evacuated on trains to the countryside, from mostly London, to keep them safe from the Luftwaffe's bombing campaigns of destruction. The children had brought joy, youth, and spirit into the villages, which was lacking round here. Most people who lived in the 2 villages were in their advanced years, but most of them took in the children. But I had no time for joy or spirit. Ever since I came back from the war in North Africa, I hadn't been the same. I was 30, and I was broken and alone. The last year of my life had been hell. I would only go out of my room for booze. I'd been drinking whiskey every day just to numb the pain in my tiny dark room, alone with nothing but memories of the war and other dark things on my mind. I never slept because of the nightmares. I'd lay there looking at the stained ceiling, trying not to close my eyes. The only news I would get of the outside world was from the papers if I saw them discarded laying on the bar, in the pub. I was going to see my sister in the next village. I thought this would be a good time to reconnect with her. It was the 1-year anniversary I came home from the war, and it being around Christmas time, I thought it was time to visit her. December had brought heavy snow, so it was going to take longer than usual to get to her cottage. I was going to take Clay Lane. I wanted to leave my sister's before the sun went down and get back to my room before dark. It didn't matter which road I chose. Both were bad in the dark, and I didn't want to drive in the pitch black, especially with snow on the road. I didn't want to go on dead-end lane if I had a choice. I always hated how the trees hanging over looked like icy fingers trying to grab one another. They created a sort of corridor to nothingness, just endless blackness. It was a very old road. It was first built by the Romans all those years ago, and it had many legends around it. It was 12:03 in the afternoon. I was going to leave for my sister soon. I needed to get out of this horrible room, but there was one thing I had to do first. I got up off my broken bed that dipped in the middle, where I hadn't slept all night. I got dressed in my old shirt and trousers that had been repaired several times. Then I put my overcoat on to keep me warm. It was so cold in here. The paint was peeling off the walls. It was so cold. I left my sparsely furnished, damp, smelly room and made my way down creaking wooden stairs to the pub. I staggered to the bar. I was starting to sober up. I slammed my flask down in front of the barman. "Fill it up."
I don't think so, Arthur. You still owe Mr. Smith 6 shillings and 7 pence for the back rent for your room. You haven't paid him, and he has told me not to serve you until you settle up with him.
I will pay him double as soon as my pension comes through at the end of the week, I promise. I needed a drink. My head was starting to throb.
Look, if it was down to me, Arthur, I would. But I don't want to get the sack from the landlord. And if he found out, he would get rid of me. You know how much of an old, grumpy bastard he is.
I grabbed his hand. "Please, I need a drink. Please." The barman looked over his shoulder.
Right. Just this once, Arthur. Don't ask me again.
"Thank you." He took my flask and poured it halfway with whiskey. He handed it back to me discreetly. He must have felt sorry for me.
I'm adding on another shilling and 5 pence onto your debt for the whiskey, okay?
I had lied to the barman. I didn't know how I was going to pay the landlord for what I owed. My pension was all gone. I had nothing left. But if I could get what I wanted from Margaret's, I might be able to pay him.
This stays between us, okay?
I put the flask in my pocket. Then I walked past a painting that I had walked past 100 times. It was a painting of the man who the pub was named after, William Little the Highwayman. He had supposedly stayed here from time to time, after he had robbed people from their possessions and money on Dead End Lane in the 1700s. And in some cases, he killed his victims when they couldn't pay up. In the picture, William was being hung on a tree for what he did, surrounded by a mob of people. I hated the painting. As I left the pub, I overheard 2 old men talking in whispers about something.
Did you hear about those German bombers flying over last night?
Yes, I did. Just rumors, surely. But if it is true, hopefully they stay away from our village. We don't want Jerry dropping their bombs around here.
Oh, and by the way, I might have something you may be interested in.
Supposedly, a squadron of German bombers had been spotted 2 miles away last night that was heading for London. This type of news made everyone nervous. They could drop their bombs anywhere. So I made my way outside into the cold air. The little village was lifeless. There was white everywhere. The snow made everyone stay at home. All the shops were shut except for the pub, which half of the village was now drinking in and talking rumors. And people were making all kinds of shady deals on the black market in there. I walked around to my car and got into the old thing and started up the engine. With the cold and snow, it took a while. Then, it fired up. I pulled out of the driveway slowly next to the inn. I drove down the village high street that was covered in snow. It took me to the end of the village, to the junction. If you went left, it would take you on Clay Lane. And if you went right, it would take you on Dead End Lane. I sat there for a few seconds and took another drink. He warmed me up a little. I looked down Clay Lane. Then, I looked down Dead End Lane. It made my hairs stand on end. The trees folded over and created an entrance of sorts to the horrible road. So I went left and then took Clay Lane, and I was quite happy to do so. There was fresh snow on the ground, but I could drive through it quite easily. The other reason I didn't like Dead End Lane, the worst bit about this road, there was a tree halfway up the road between the two villages, white in appearance, and it was dead. The locals called it Dead Man's Tree. It was a sort of a local landmark. I never liked the name. I never liked the sight of it either. It gave me chills every time I drove past it. This was the very tree that the highwayman, William Little, the man from the painting in the pub, got hanged on by the townspeople in the 1700s. On the white tree's very top branch for his crimes. But the passage of time had started to blur the line between fact and fiction into his legend. People from time to time had seen his figure walking on the dark road at night, searching for justice, but they were just tall tales from superstitious locals. I casted my mind away from that horrible road and took a drink of my whiskey from my flask. I gritted my teeth. The whiskey burned as it trickled down my throat, and I carried on with my journey. This road was much better to drive on, no potholes or sharp turns. It was just a straight road, with bushes and shrubs lining the road on either side. Unlike the dangerous road on Dead End Lane, which had sharp, overgrown bramble bushes that was reclaiming the old road back to its natural state. I drove the few miles slowly to my sister's village of Wellesley. It was quite pleasant. It looked beautiful in the blanket of white fresh snow as I drove to her cottage. It was our mother's and father's when they were alive. I wanted her to have it. There was too many memories in that house for me. So I parked up at her white cottage and took one more drink to take the edge off. I didn't want to drink in front of Margaret. She never liked alcohol, especially after our father took a liking to it as well. Then I got out of my car, walked to the front door, and I knocked. She opened the green door that had vines hanging over it.
Oh, Arthur, it's you.
She stood there in her flower pinny, and her hair was in a bun. "Hi, Margaret," I said.
It's good to see you.
"It's good to see you too. I did miss her."
It's been months, Arthur. Where have you been?
"I've been in Millbury. I found some lodgings above the local inn, the Highwayman. I could see that she was concerned about me and about this news."
I know it. How was the roads?
I took Clay Lane, so no real trouble.
Good. You don't want to go on the other road in this weather, or any other time really. Well, come on in. I've just made a fresh pot of tea, and I've got some crumpets on the go. It looks like you could do with something to eat.
"I can't stay long, Margaret. I have to leave before dusk." She had a look on her face that only I knew. Disappointment. She could smell the alcohol on my breath. I walked through to her living room, and I sat in Dad's old armchair. It was her husband now, Albert's. "Have you heard from Albert at all?"
No, I haven't. Mail takes so long to arrive these days. The last I heard, he was heading into France after the attack on Normandy.
"I'm sure you will get a letter soon." So I asked her how she was doing.
I'm good. A little under the weather. But apart from that, good. It's about time we finished this war. Then Albert could come home faster.
I could see that the news on the radio was starting to upset Margaret. Didn't really like listening to it myself either.
Sorry. Let me turn that radio off. 1 second. There. That's better. Oh, I didn't tell you.
"What's that?" I asked, with fake enthusiasm.
I took in 3 girls from London last week. They needed somewhere to stay, so I offered out the spare rooms.
"At least they're getting some use out of them," I said.
Yes, true. Though rationing is getting harder now, with 3 girls.
"Well, I suppose 3 girls do eat a lot. Are they around at all?"
They are at school. The church has been made into a makeshift one, for the children. They won't be back until later.
Margaret never had children of her own. Her husband, Albert, never wanted kids, but she always secretly did. So Margaret was probably all too happy to take in the girls, even if it was temporary. I was looking around the living room. It was covered in handmade decorations, of reds and greens for Christmas. Then I looked at the old photos of Mum and Dad, then me and Margaret as kids. She noticed this.
Oh, Arthur, weren't those the days? They were much simpler times, without troubles or regrets.
I started to shake my leg up and down, and I was fidgeting around in the chair. I needed a drink. My heart was beating rapidly. I was sweating.
Arthur, what's wrong? Has something happened?
Margaret, I...
Yes, Arthur. What is it?
I sat there frozen. I couldn't move. My mouth was dry. I just couldn't bring myself to tell her what was wrong. It's nothing.
You've been drinking, haven't you, Arthur? I can smell it on your breath.
I said nothing. I just looked down at the floor in shame.
Last time we spoke, you promised me you were going to pack in the drinking.
Look, don't you start lecturing me, all right? I really have tried, but you don't know what it's like, do you? I've done some terrible things, things you wouldn't understand. You don't know what I've been through. I was fighting back the tears.
You're right, I don't know what you've been through. Tell me, and we can deal with it together.
I looked at her. I can't tell you. She walked over to me and hugged me tightly while I sat in the chair. I gave her one back. I broke down and I started to sob. Then she let go and stood up.
If you don't want to tell me what's wrong, that's okay, you really don't have to. But I suppose living above a pub ain't helping matters. I've got an idea though. Why don't you come and live with me for a bit and save yourself some money?
I didn't want to mention to her that I had no money and I was in debt, because she'd offer what little she had to me, and I didn't want to take it from her. I can't do that, I said. Not with 3 girls in the house now.
I suppose it'd be a bit cramped. But we're British after all, we'd make it work somehow. What do you reckon then?
I thought about it for a minute, but ultimately declined her offer. I didn't want to stay here. She wouldn't let me drink in the house, and I needed it. I'm sorry, Margaret, but I can't stay here.
Well, if you're sure, the offer is always there. If you're not staying here, then let me make you a cottage pie, just like Mum used to make. I've got some beef that fell off a truck. I have some left over from yesterday's dinner.
I was quite hungry, and I did enjoy Margaret's cooking, though I was a bit surprised that she had resorted to buying things off the black market. She was always law-abiding, but I guess, desperate times and all. Okay, I said, but I have to be off soon, before dark. I don't want to navigate those roads at night.
Don't worry, it won't take long to cook, so sit down and rest your feet. I'll go and start cooking it now. If you need me, I'll be in the kitchen.
I sat in Dad's chair. It always smelled of red rose tobacco, Dad's favorite. I could imagine him sitting here smoking his pipe. He never sat anywhere else except this old brown leather chair. Margaret walked off to the kitchen and started to prepare for dinner. I sat in Dad's chair in the living room all alone, and I looked to my left. There was a small wooden chest of drawers. I looked in the direction of the kitchen to make sure Margaret was still in there, and I opened the top drawer. I reached my hand inside and pulled out something shiny and heavy. It was my dad's old pocket watch from the Great War. I held it flat in my hand. The silver gleamed as it ticked away. This was what I really came for. It had his initial on it. But could I really sell it, so I could pay off my debts and buy more whiskey? What would Dad think of me if he could see me? I felt shame for what I was about to do. I clutched it in my hand. I couldn't take it. I put it back quickly and shut the drawer before Margaret came back. It was special to her. I would have to find another way to get the money, but I didn't know how. Maybe I could sell my old car, but I don't know who would want it. Scrap, maybe. It was on its last legs as it is. She cooked dinner while I sat there. Then she brought it through. We ate it, and it was the best meal I'd had in ages. especially with the black market meat being so scarce these days. Then we talked a bit, just general chit-chat, gossiping mostly about how Miss O'Reilly down the road kept having fellas visit while her husband's is away in the army. But she didn't mention what was bothering me. Knew I was too stubborn to answer, I suppose. We turned on the radio and listened to a comedy program. We both laughed. I hadn't laughed like that in ages, and for a moment, it made me forget my troubles. Then I started feeling drowsy. Next thing I knew, I suddenly woke up screaming, jumped out of Dad's armchair. Where am I? What's happening? Their faces. I see their faces. I screamed. My sister was holding my hands, trying to calm me down.
It's okay, Arthur. It's okay. We're here in the living room. We are safe.
I started to steady my breathing. What time is it? I asked.
It's 4 o'clock.
Why didn't you wake me up? You knew I wanted to leave before dark.
Well, you looked so tired. I can tell you haven't been sleeping well, have you? And I thought you could sleep here for the night.
Margaret, you should have woke me up. I need to leave. I started rushing to my car.
Arthur, please don't go. Stay, please. Why do you have to go?
I'm sorry, but I've just got to go. I got in my car, started up the engine, and sped off, the wheels spraying snow high into the cold air. I looked at my sister in the mirror as I drove off back to my room at the inn. She just looked so sad and alone, standing there in the snow. Part 2. A strange man. The sun was starting to go down as I was driving out of Wellesley Village. I didn't want to leave this late, I said to myself. Why didn't she wake me up? She knew I didn't want to drive in the dark. I was speeding now. As I came out of the village, I took the one road that led to the junction, that split off to Clay Lane and Dead End Lane. I was going faster and faster now, nearly sliding about the road because of the black ice and snow. But I managed to keep control of my car. I took a big drink from my flask to steady my nerves. I kept looking at the sun. It was getting lower and lower. I was keeping my focus on the sunset. Then I looked at the road. I braked hard and skidded along the road. Then came to a stop. A copper had blocked Clay Lane. He flashed me with his lights and rang his bell. Then he got out. The old officer walked over to me and took off his custodian helmet. He didn't look too happy. I rolled my window down and prepared to speak to the policemen.
Hello, sir. Can I see your identification papers, please?
Think I have them here somewhere. I got them out to give them to him. He looked up and down, glancing once at me, then the papers. He had a distrusting look on his face.
Okay, sir. Thank you. You can't be too careful. Now, can you tell me why you were speeding like that?
I turned off my engine. I really didn't want to stay here any longer than I had to. I'm sorry, officer. I lost control of the car, and I skidded because of the snow.
Well, mind how you go in future.
Then he looked at me as he sniffed the air.
Have you been drinking, sir?
Yes, officer. Just a little bit, I said.
Right then. Well, let's not overdo things, shall we? It's not illegal, but let's keep it sensible, eh?
Yes, of course, officer. So what's with the roadblock?
An old, rotten tree has fallen upon the road, blocking it, I'm afraid. Access is quite impossible until morning. There's far too much snow for us to get through, you see. Clay Lane is closed for at least the next 24 hours. Until the ice melts and we can move it off the road, it is utterly inaccessible. There's no way of going that way. You will have to take Dead End Lane, I'm afraid. No one is going that way for a good while.
The thought of going on Dead End Lane was making me feel sick. I didn't want to go on that road, if I could help it. But I had to get to my room at the inn, and I didn't want to be out after dark. Okay, officer, I'll go on Dead End Lane. I said this with some derision. Plus, If I didn't get back to the pub soon, I was going to run out of whiskey in my flask. The thought of that made me sweat. I longed for the taste of alcohol as I spoke to this policeman. I took a deep breath and started to close my window. That's when the officer stopped me.
And sir, we've received a report from the village residents. They claim to have discovered a German Messerschmitt Bf 109, which apparently crash-landed in the field over there. It seems it was shot down by a Spitfire. The pilot, they say, was absent from the cockpit upon investigation. Therefore, do be vigilant. Should anyone solicit a ride or appear unduly suspicious, or if anything seems out of the ordinary, proceed directly to the constabulary and report it forthwith.
Yes, officer. Of course. Strange, I thought. A lone German plane wouldn't fly over England by itself. Or maybe the plane had been escorting those supposed bombers last night that the people in the pub were talking about this afternoon. Maybe he got lost from the group, and a Spitfire went after him and shot him down, then crashed in the field. But I thought, if I bumped into anyone unfriendly, I have my service revolver under my seat in my car with 6 bullets in it, and it was cocked and ready to fire. With this, I thanked him, took a gulp of whiskey, and I was not looking forward to my journey. I sat at the junction that split off to the 2 roads. I looked right at Clay Lane, that was blocked by the copper's car and his wooden sign that said, closed. Then I looked left to the dead-end lane. It was just a corridor of overgrown trees lining the road. It would soon be dark on that road. I didn't have a choice. This was the only road to my village now that Clay Lane had been closed. So, I hurried up and took the cracked, tarmacked, bumpy road that was overgrown with weeds. I waved to the policeman as I passed him. He tipped his hat to me in response. As I took dead-end lane, I saw the blacked-out sign for the roads. They painted them black since the start of the war, in case of invasion by the Germans. But not many used this road since Clay Lane was built. It was dusk now, and I just wanted to get to my room, so I started to speed up. The road, if you could call it that, was awful. Ice and snow everywhere, and I was sliding around sharp corners. I could see endless rows of trees on either side of the road. Then the hail and snow started to fall. Slow to begin with, but then it got heavier. Size of peas, then the size of golf balls. My window wipers couldn't keep up, and with all the frost covering the edges of my window screen, I couldn't really see the road as the snow smashed on the window. I went faster now, putting my foot to the floor. The back wheels kept sliding out. I was gripping the steering wheel tightly. It was getting darker and darker. It was only 7 miles to Millbury, but in the snow and the dark, it might as well be 700. Never really liked the dark that much, especially on this road. Only a few street lamps illuminating the long road, and my headlights were dim at best. I kept on going at a steady pace. The potholes were putting a strain on my suspension. I lit up a cigarette, and I had a swig of whiskey every 5 minutes. I was coming up to a bridge, so I drove over the small stone bridge that hung over a frozen river. The car flew over the bridge, and the front tires hit the road with a clunk. I carried on through the corridor of bushes and shrubs on either side of me. But every time I changed gear, it started to make a grinding sound. I think I damaged something when I hit the road. I was pushing the engine too hard, and it started to overheat, with steam hissing out of the bonnet. I threw the cigarette butt out the window into the freezing night air. I switched on my AM radio to give me some comfort in the inky darkness, and from the twigs that stuck out like bony fingers trying to grab me, I turned the dial to different stations, but all of them were distorted. Then I just got static. The radio's been broken for a while now. I had no heat in here either, and I was starting to shiver. I started to feel bad about how I treated Margaret, but I couldn't go back now. All I wanted was to persuade the barman to give me more whiskey, and then lock myself in my room with my flask. It was the only place I felt safe at night. Or any other time, really. I liked my room, but I hated it at the same time. The Highwayman was the only pub that would let me get a drink without paying for it straight away. How long that was going to last, I didn't know. Then, that's when it dawned on me. I was coming up to Dead Man's Tree. I didn't want to go near that tree. There was just something about it that gave me a bad feeling. So, just a few yards until I passed the horrible tree. I was still gripping the wheel at this point, looking straight ahead, trying not to look at the tree, thinking to myself, "You can do this, just get past the tree." And there it was, Dead Man's Tree, the supposed execution site of William Little, the highwayman. The tree sat there on the left-hand side of the road, behind an old wooden fence all on its own, shriveled up, like its life had been drained years ago. I closed my eyes for a second. I didn't look at the tree. I was going 40 miles an hour and climbing. Then I opened my eyes and slammed the brakes on. An animal, like a deer or something, leapt into the road. I swerved to avoid it. The back wheels skidded. I headed for the side of the road and I came to a stop, hitting the grass verge with a loud bang, and a flurry of snow sprayed into the air like a wave. I hit my head on the steering wheel. Everything went blurred. Then, I woke up, and there was blood running down my face. I felt concussed. I looked around, and it was near dark now. Didn't know how much time had passed. I was right under a street lamp, buzzing something awful, though it didn't give me much light. The moon couldn't break through the cloud either, to help light the road. Took a swig of whiskey to try and numb the pain, then stumbled out of the car, looked over the road, and just my luck, I'd broken down right next to Dead Man's Tree. It looked just as I remembered it, bent over slightly to the left a bit, white and dead, like it was petrified. Twigs spiraled towards the dark sky, covered in icicles and snow. Bark was peeling off the ancient trunk. No birds made it their home, and I could see the top branch where the rope was rumored to have been, where they dropped William Little and broke the highwayman's neck. Gave me the shivers, it did. Didn't want to be there. Not now. The tree stood on its own, malevolent, giving me a sense of foreboding. Most of the trees and bushes around here had retained most of their brown and dark green leaves from the autumn that hid under the snow, but this tree had been stripped bare of any leaves for years. The trees that lined the road above were almost covering the sky. I don't know why, but I had the feeling I was being watched. I looked around, but couldn't see anyone. But I carried on assessing the damage. I crumpled through the soft snow, crunching as I went. I took my lantern and the equipment out of the boot. I was sure I had burst a tire. I looked at the road behind me where I skidded. I had removed all of the snow from the road like a snowplow. I had left some black tire marks on the road. I skidded for about 20 feet. I walked to the front of the car and bent over. "Oh bloody hell," I said to myself. I was right. I had blown a tire, completely destroyed it. This is going to take a while to fix. Stupid dear. I took a swig of booze again. I was running low, but there was plenty back at the inn. If I could get it from the barman, that is. So I got the jack and the wrench and put it under the car, bent down and got the new tire, and prepared to change it. With the dim light from the street lamp and the lantern I had in my hand, I could just about change the tire over. Outside of my circle of light, I was surrounded by darkness that my headlight cut through. It was hard to change the tire in the snow, so I struggled to get the first nut off. That's when I heard something shuffling behind me in the snow.
Excuse me.
I was so alarmed by this. I stood straight up. My heart was racing. I was about to turn around. Who was this, and why were they here in the dark? Was it the German pilot, or someone else? I turned around, then I saw them. It was an unassuming man. He was standing at the side of the road with his hands in his pockets. He had a trench coat on, smart trousers, shiny shoes, and a flap cap on his head. I couldn't see his face. His flaps from his coat were pulled all the way up. Was he the German? Obviously he didn't have a uniform on, but he could have changed out of them. I just stood there looking at him and he was looking at me. I thought of going for my gun, but I wouldn't reach it in time. He didn't sound German. That's when he spoke.
What happened here then?
He had an English accent, or a very convincing one at least. I lost control of the car and burst a tire, I said. The man just stood there, looking at the car and at me.
You shouldn't drink and drive. It gets people into trouble.
He could probably smell the alcohol on me. It wasn't the drink. A deer leapt into the road and I swerved to avoid it, I said. I was getting annoyed now. He wasn't helping me, and he was just lecturing me about how to drive a car, and insinuating that I crashed my car because I was drunk.
Do you think you could give me a lift into Wellesley Village? Once you have fixed your car, of course.
I thought about it for a second. I don't think so. I don't mean to be rude, but I don't know you, and don't think it would be right. Why do you need a lift anyway? I asked him.
My car has broken down, just up the road. I ran out of petrol.
He pointed in the direction I was going, but I didn't really believe his story. I kept my eyes trained on him in case he made any sudden movements. He could have a Luger under that trench coat. Well, I don't have any petrol to give you, unfortunately. I'm running low myself. The man stood there, just staring at me with blank eyes, as snow lightly rained down on us in the dim light.
Can you take me to the petrol station at all?
As he said this, he was warming his hands with his breath. I'm sorry, but I just don't trust strangers. And a policeman told me something tonight that's made me weary. That's all. Nothing personal.
What did the policeman say?
Before I could answer, he answered for me.
Was it something to do with the German pilot at all?
Was he a resident of the village? Or the pilot? This man was starting to make me feel very uncomfortable. I kept an eye on my gun very closely. Yes, that's right, I said. How did you know that?
I was the one who told the police about the plane. I found the Messerschmitt laying in the field, but there was no pilot in sight.
He did get the make of the plane right, so the information he provided did make me trust him a little. But news travels fast around here, so I didn't trust him entirely either.
So, how about that lift? I'll give you 3 shillings for your troubles.
He was not going away, and he was becoming more and more insistent on the matter. With the offer of 3 shillings, I reluctantly decided I would take him with me, to just outside the village with some hesitation. I didn't like this, but he wasn't leaving, and the offer of 3 shillings was very enticing to me, and it was too good to pass up, and I needed the money. Okay, I'll take you to outside the village, but no further.
Thank you. I will give you your 3 shillings when you get me to my destination.
Without saying a word, he walked to the passenger side of my car, leaving footprints in the snow behind him, and got in, then closed the door and said nothing to me, and just stared into the pitch-black nothingness and waited for me. I thought to myself, how rude this man was. I agreed about the lift, which I didn't want to give him, and he doesn't help me change the tire. I just hoped he wasn't lying about the shillings. So he just waited in my car while I struggled to change my tire. The cold made it even harder to unscrew the wheel nuts. I was twisting one of the tight wheel nuts with the wrench, and then suddenly my hand slipped and I lost grip on the wrench, and my hand scraped down the side of the hubcaps. I screamed out in pain. There was a big gash down the back of my right hand that started to bleed. Then I happened to look up at the side of the car, and the man in my car was just looking at me, not blinking and not doing anything. He didn't say a thing for a moment. Then he waved at me. Clearly there was something not quite right about this man. I was starting to regret my decision. I thought to myself, maybe I could drop this weird man at the police station and they could deal with him. After all, the policeman did say I should report anything suspicious. But if I did that, I wouldn't get the money he promised, and I was desperate for it. Then, he turned his head slowly and looked ahead again. I thought to myself, I've had enough of this. Get this new tire on, and get driving quickly, and get this strange man out of my car and get paid. I got an old rag out of my pocket and wrapped it around my hand tightly. I didn't know if this man was a resident or the German. I didn't care. It wasn't my business. He didn't ask me my name, and I didn't ask him either. Quite frankly, I didn't want to know. So, I managed to get the last nuts tightened on the wheel, and I swapped them over. I tightened the nuts on the new tire, and then I packed up everything and threw everything in the boot, including the old tire. But I left the lantern on the back seat. The blood was dry on my forehead now, so I scraped it off with my fingernails. Then I entered my car and turned on the engine.
You should take care. This road can be dangerous to drive on at night.
It's like he was mocking me with this comment. I didn't respond. Part 3. Dead End Lane. As the car pulled off from the grass verge, it was pitch black, now that was surrounded by trees everywhere. My headlights were doing very little. I could see the tree in the distance, illuminated by my red rear lights, as I was looking at it in my mirror. Then the man spoke up.
Did you feel peculiar around that white tree?
A little, perhaps. There is a legend around it, and it does give off an ominous presence. Apparently a man called William got hung there many years ago, but no one knows if it's true or not. I didn't want to talk about that tree anymore. I sped up to get to my room faster and get this man out of my car.
So, do you live around here?
I didn't want to give him my address. Yes, just in the village. There was a moment of peace until he broke the silence again.
I read about an accident that happened last year at the White Tree. This very night, I think it was, in fact.
What accident? I said.
Did you not read the local papers? A family of 4 were killed right next to that tree last year, and nobody knows what happened. The police found the car destroyed with the family mutilated and dead inside. The police suspected suicide. Maybe the father drove them into the tree. Maybe he killed them and then himself. Or someone else killed them and they were never caught. We will probably never know what happened to that poor family.
I didn't say anything to this. I was trying to focus on the road. I took a drink of my whiskey, only a few drops left. I drank the last drop, shaking the flask as I did. This filled me with dread. As soon as I get to the pub, I will hopefully fill up my flask up to the brim, if I can blag it. My legs started to shake. The snow pounded on the window screen, making it hard to see.
Are you sure you should be drinking?
Excuse me, but what I do in my vehicle is my own business. If you do not like it, I can let you out now if you prefer, and you can walk the rest of the way.
You're quite right. I apologize.
We carried on in silence for the next mile or so. I put my foot down. I wanted to get him out of my car as soon as possible. He kept glancing over occasionally. I was becoming more and more uneasy with this man in my car. I had my gun handy right under my seat, if he tried anything. We were about 2 miles away from my village now. Almost there, I said, yawning to myself. I realized that I hadn't seen his broken down car on the road yet. So, where is your car? I said. He took a while to answer.
Oh, yes, it's just another half a mile up the road.
I still didn't believe him fully. The rough treatment of my car was taking its toll. The engine hissed and smoke poured out of the bonnet. The car was starting to cut out and sputter. I braked and I stopped in the middle of the road. I sat there with the car overheating. "Stay here, okay? And don't move," I said. I prepared to get out of the car and head into the flurry of snow that was falling outside. I opened the door and made my way to the back seat. I got out the lantern. It was so dark out here. We were circled by trees hanging down, but I could see through them, and behind them were endless fields that were covered in snow. I went to the bonnet and opened it. I pointed the light to the radiator that was hissing. I think it was empty, and it needed filling up. I went back to the driver's seat side and I opened it. I poked my head in and asked the man for an old milk bottle that was filled with water. It was in the glove compartment. He opened the compartment and reached for the bottle, and handed it to me, with a toothy smile on his face that unnerved me. The light from my lantern illuminated his unsettling grin. His smile peered out through his collar. "Thank you," I said. I took it and went back to the radiator. I twisted the cap off, and a large whoosh of steam came out of the radiator. I poured the water into the spout. I put the cap back on the radiator and closed the bonnet. I made my way back to my seat and brushed off the snow off my coat. Right, that should do it. I put the lantern on the back seat and turned the key. The engine was not turning over. It was not starting. The gears grinded together. I think the engine had overheated. I was going to have to stay here for a while and wait until it cooled down. It was uncomfortably silent in here. The only sound I heard was the snowflakes landing on the car. We said nothing to each other. Then, he asked me a question.
Why do you have a gun under your seat?
Why do you want to know? I don't see how it is any of your business anyway.
You're right. I'm sorry. I saw it sticking out from under your seat, and I got curious is all.
I didn't like how he was inquiring about my gun. Was he going to use it against me? From now on, I was going to keep a sharp eye on it. I turned to look out at the darkness out of the window screen. The snow gently fell on the glass. It was getting freezing in the cabin. My hands froze. I blew into them to warm them up. The deathly silence was becoming unbearable. I pulled out a cigarette for the boredom. As I struck the match, it lit up the dark cabin. From the corner of my eye, I felt like he was looking at me through his coat. The smoke filled the small enclosed space that I was sharing with this strange man. "Would you like one?" He didn't answer me. There was more silence. Then out of nowhere, the man was humming to himself.
I used to hum that tune to my children when they were babies in their cribs.
"That's very nice," I said. I didn't know what else to say. I couldn't stay here any longer. I couldn't take it. So I started up the engine, and I got lucky. It fired up. Maybe I would get some heat from the engine now, and get warmed up. I started to drive through the snow I had accumulated around the car while sitting here, and I speeded up to get to the village quickly through the tunnel of trees.
So, what do you think happened to that family at the tree last year?
I was getting very annoyed now with all the questions. "I don't know," I said, angrily. "I don't want to think about that type of stuff. Okay, I suggest we sit in silence for the remainder of the journey."
I understand. It must be hard for a man to come back from the war. Isn't that right, Arthur?
I turned my head slowly towards the man. "How do you know my name? I never told you it. And how do you know that I was in the war? Did you go through my wallet?"
No, I didn't need to. But I know a lot more than your name, Arthur. I know that you can't sleep, because every time you close your eyes you see dead faces of the people that you killed in the war. You drink to forget the memories of your past, and I know what you did to that family last year, this very night.
I started sweating. I wanted to throw up. My eyes widened. I sped up. He turned to me and got closer and said,
It was the day you came back from the war. And because your visions and nightmares, and the guilt and shame that you hide, because of the boys you slaughtered, you were driving on this very road 1 year ago tonight. You had been drinking all day, and you got so drunk you couldn't stand up. You stumbled into your car and just drove anywhere to get the visions out of your head. You took Dead End Lane by mistake, and then you were approaching Dead Man's Tree.
"Shut up," I said.
But there was a family on this road as well, wasn't there? And you were so drunk, you drove on the wrong side of the road and made them swerve and crash into Dead Man's Tree. And it killed the father, the mother, and the 2 little children instantly.
"How do you know all this?" I speeded along the road. I was starting to lose control of the car.
Well, Arthur, I was there. I was the father in the other car. I was in the driver's seat, and you made me swerve into the tree. I am the man you killed.
Then you got out of your car and stood there and did nothing.
You took a drink of whiskey, then you got back in your car and skidded off, and then drove off back to your little room so you could hide away and hope no one would find out. You didn't even read the papers to find out who you killed. You left me and my family to die that night because of your demons. Now I can't find my family. I can never be with them because of what you have done. I have been left here, and now I've come to punish you for what you did to me and my family. You should have listened to your instincts, Arthur, and have not driven on this road tonight.
He tried grabbing my steering wheel and tried pulling it from one side to the next. I reached for my gun under my seat and fired 5 shots of my revolver at the man who was in my passenger seat. But it did nothing. It went right through him and into my window, shattering the glass in the process. The shots made my ears ring and disoriented. Then he was gone. He disappeared into thin air. I looked all around my car. He wasn't anywhere. Then looked at the rearview mirror, and the man was sitting in the back seat, and he was looking at me menacingly, with vengeful, dead black eyes. As I was looking at him, I froze with terror. I wasn't paying attention to the road. That's when I lost control of the car, swerving over the icy road. I had no time to put the brakes on, and then crashed headfirst into a tree at the side of the road. The front of the car was absolutely crushed by the tree. I felt my ankle snap. It was so painful. I could smell petrol. The car horn was blaring out into the surrounding fields. I grabbed my lantern from the car and my pistol that only had 1 bullet in it and looked at the back seat, but he was gone. And then I opened the door, then threw myself out of the car and crawled away. I kept on crawling till I got to the other side of the road. I couldn't stand up. I badly damaged my ankle. It looked twisted. That's when the car exploded. It lit up the trees. And standing on the other side of the road was the man from my car, standing there staring at me. He had his cap off and his flaps folded down. He had the most grotesque face I had ever seen. His jaw was hanging off his sallow, pale face. His eyes were pitch black pits and soulless. The only color on him was red, from the blood that dripped down his white face. Then he started to float towards me, hovering over the road like a demon. Was this real, or one of my nightmares come to life? I looked at the back of the tree on my side of the road. I could see light illuminating through the dark woods. It was my only chance, so I took it. I was still about a mile from Wellesley, and I wasn't going to make that. I got up on my feet with the help of a large branch, and used it as a walking stick, and then started to hobble towards the light source. I held up my lantern to light the way through the dark, thick woods. I entered the trees. I didn't dare look back.
An Unwanted Passenger will conclude with Volume 2 soon.